Hello everyone. Tonight we're going somewhere that shouldn't exist. Lakes, underwater, not metaphorical lakes, not poetic descriptions, actual lakes sitting on the ocean floor, complete with shorelines, waves and currents of their own. Except these lakes will kill you, instantly. Touch the water and you're dead. Swim into one and you'll never swim out. These are brine pools, and they're one of the strangest, deadliest, most alien environments on planet Earth. Forget what you think you know about the ocean. This goes deeper than that. This is about pockets of ancient death trapped beneath the sea, waiting for something to stumble in. So before we dive into this liquid nightmare, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you're into content that makes you question reality, but only if you actually enjoy this stuff. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always fascinated to know there are people from Singapore to São Paulo all exploring these mysteries together at completely random hours. Now turn down those lights. Maybe put on some headphones. Let the room get quiet, because where we're going, silence is survival. And in the brine pools, one wrong move means death. Let's descend into the underwater lakes that kill everything they touch. It's 2020. The research vessel Ocean Explorer is cruising through the northern Gulf of Aqaba, an arm of the Red Sea squeezed between Egypt and Saudi Arabia. The team isn't looking for anything in particular. They're conducting routine bathymetric surveys, mapping the seafloor with sonar. Standard stuff, boring even. Then the sonar returns something impossible. At 1,770 meters depth, approximately 5,800 feet below the surface, the equipment shows what appears to be distinct bodies of water sitting in depressions on the seafloor, separate from the surrounding ocean. The readings don't make sense. Water inside water, the team double-checks their equipment, run diagnostics. Everything functions correctly. The readings persist. They deploy an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle equipped with cameras and sampling equipment. And what those cameras captured changed how we understand the ocean. There, on the seafloor, are pools. Actual pools of liquid, denser and darker than the surrounding seawater, sitting perfectly still in natural basins carved into rock. The water above them is clear. The water inside them looks wrong. Thick, almost syrupy. The boundary between the two is razor sharp. You can see exactly where one ends and the other begins, like someone drew a line with a marker. It looks like a lake, on the bottom of the ocean, a lake inside the ocean. The ROV approaches slowly. Its sensors detect massive salinity spikes. The pools aren't just salty, they're approximately 10 times saltier than normal seawater. The density is so extreme that the brine doesn't mix with the ocean above it. It sits there, separate, isolated, a liquid more similar to oil than water in how it behaves. And then the cameras capture something that makes the entire research team go silent. A fish swims into the pool. It doesn't swim out. The fish enters the brine, and immediately its movements become erratic. It flails, spasms. Within seconds, it stops moving entirely. The body drifts slowly down through the dense brine, sinking like a stone through molasses until it settles on the pool's floor among dozens, maybe hundreds of other corpses. Crabs, eels, fish of various species, all dead, all preserved in the hypersaline water like specimens in formaldehyde. The brine pool is a death trap, a perfect killing field sitting silently on the ocean floor, waiting for the next victim to make the fatal mistake of swimming too close. The team named these the Neom brine pools, after the futuristic Saudi development project in the region. 4 distinct pools, each with slightly different chemistry, all deadly, all sitting just 1.2 miles from the coast, the closest to shore of any brine pools ever discovered. But here's what really terrified the researchers. These pools are brand new to science, completely unknown until 2020. And if 4 major brine pools can exist undiscovered so close to civilization, what else is down there? Because the Neom pools aren't unique, they're not even rare. We've found brine pools in the Gulf of Mexico, in the Mediterranean Sea, in the Red Sea, all over the Red Sea actually, and every single one of them is a killing field, surrounded by thriving ecosystems that somehow survive right on the edge of instant death. This is the paradox of brine pools. They're deadly beyond measure, and they're teeming with life. To understand why brine pools exist, we need to go back millions of years, way back, before humans, before most mammals, before the continents looked anything like they do today. Picture the Red Sea region during the Miocene epoch, roughly 20 million years ago. Tectonic plates are shifting, pulling Africa and Arabia apart, creating the rift that will eventually become the Red Sea. During this period, the Proto-Red Sea repeatedly floods and evaporates. The connection to the Indian Ocean opens and closes as tectonic movements continue. When the connection closes, the trapped seawater evaporates under the brutal desert sun. And when water evaporates, salt doesn't. The salt stays behind, accumulating in massive deposits hundreds of feet thick. Then the connection reopens. The basin floods again. Sediment washes in, covering the salt deposits, burying them under layers of mud, sand, and organic material. This cycle repeats multiple times. Flood, evaporate, bury. Each iteration builds a geological lasagna of evaporites and sedimentary layers. Fast forward to today. Those ancient salt deposits are still down there, buried beneath the modern seafloor. But salt is soluble. When seawater seeps down through cracks and faults in the sediment, it encounters those deposits. The water dissolves the salt, becoming saturated far beyond normal salinity levels. This creates brine, and brine is heavy, much heavier than regular seawater. So instead of rising and mixing with the ocean, it sinks. It flows downward through the sediment, following gravity until it reaches a low point, a depression, a basin, and there it pools, accumulating over thousands of years, creating an underwater lake of hypersaline death. This is how most Red Sea brine pools form, ancient evaporates dissolving into modern seawater. Nothing magical, nothing mysterious, except it is mysterious, because we don't fully understand why some areas develop brine pools while others don't. We don't know how long it takes for a pool to form. We don't know how stable they are over geological time. In the Gulf of Mexico, brine pools form differently. There, salt domes buried deep beneath the seafloor are squeezed upward by tectonic pressure. These massive formations of pure salt, some over a mile tall, push toward the surface. As they rise, they pierce through sediment layers, creating faults and fractures. Seawater infiltrates these faults, dissolves the salt, and brine flows out onto the seafloor like oil from a well. The result is the same: hypersaline pools sitting in basins, but the chemistry can be different. Gulf of Mexico brine pools often contain high concentrations of methane and hydrogen sulfide, toxic gases produced by bacteria deep in the sediment. These pools aren't just salty, they're poisonous. Let's talk about what happens when you touch brine pool water. Not you personally, obviously. But let's talk about what happens when a fish, a crab, an eel, any marine animal makes contact with that water. Normal seawater contains about 35 grams of salt per litre. That's roughly 3.5% salinity. Marine animals are adapted to this. Their cells maintain osmotic balance with the surrounding water through complex biological mechanisms. Brine pool water can contain up to 300 grams of salt per litre. That's nearly 30% salinity, 10 times the concentration of normal seawater. And osmosis doesn't care about your comfort. When a cell adapted to 3.5% salinity suddenly encounters 30% salinity, water rushes out of the cell, trying to equalize the concentration. The cell shrivels, proteins denature, membranes rupture, cellular machinery breaks down. This happens in seconds, maybe milliseconds for smaller cells. The organism doesn't have time to react and doesn't have time to swim away. The brine essentially pickles living tissue on contact. But it's not just the salt. Many brine pools contain dissolved methane at concentrations high enough to be toxic. Methane interferes with cellular respiration, essentially suffocating cells at the molecular level. Then there's hydrogen sulfide, which is even more deadly. This gas binds to hemoglobin, preventing blood from carrying oxygen. So a fish swimming into a brine pool doesn't just get dehydrated, it simultaneously suffocates, gets poisoned by hydrogen sulfide, and has its cells torn apart by osmotic stress. Death is instant, not painful, because there's no time for pain signals to reach the brain. Just an instant transition from alive to dead. The bodies don't decay normally either. The high salinity acts as a preservative. Bacteria that would normally decompose organic matter can't survive in the brine. So the corpses just sit there, perfectly preserved, accumulating on the pool floor like an underwater mass grave. Some of these bodies might be decades old, maybe centuries. The brine doesn't care. It preserves everything equally. Let's talk about one specific brine pool that captured public imagination. The one with a name so perfectly ominous, it sounds like something from a horror movie. The Jacuzzi of Despair, sometimes called the Hot Tub of Despair, is located in the Gulf of Mexico, roughly a day's boat ride from the coast of New Orleans, about 3,300 feet below the surface. It measures approximately 100 feet in circumference and is 12 feet deep. The name is darkly appropriate. The pool sits in a crater-like depression, and from a distance, it does look inviting. The brine is slightly warmer than the surrounding water. The methane bubbling up from beneath creates ripples on the surface, mimicking the agitation of an actual jacuzzi. But step into this jacuzzi and you're instantly dead. The research vessel Nautilus explored this pool extensively in 2016. Their ROV Hercules captured stunning footage that went viral online. Around the perimeter, life explodes. Mussel beds cover every available surface. Tube worms wave in the current. Amphipods swarm in dense clouds. Fish patrol the edges, hunting for prey. It's an oasis of abundance in the relatively barren deep gulf. But inside the pool itself, only corpses. Dozens of dead crabs lie scattered across the bottom, their shells intact, their bodies perfectly preserved. A fish here, an eel there, all dead, all pickled by the hypersaline, methane-rich water. The footage shows something else, something that makes the whole scene even more unsettling. The living animals at the pool's edge are constantly testing the boundary. A crab will approach, antennae waving, trying to determine if it's safe to cross. It gets close, close enough that one more step would be fatal. Then it backs away, but occasionally something miscalculates. The footage captured one tragic moment. A fish pursuing prey gets too close to the brine interface. Just the tip of its tail touches the hypersaline water. Immediately the fish reacts, trying to swim away, but the damage is done. The osmotic shock spreads through its body. Within seconds, it loses coordination. It drifts sideways, unable to control its movement, and crosses fully into the brine. And then it's over. The fish sinks slowly to join the graveyard below. This is what makes brine pools so deadly. The boundary is invisible underwater. To human eyes, or to fish eyes, there's no obvious warning. Just water. And then different water. And by the time you realize you've crossed into the different water, you're already dying. Here's where things get weird. Despite being instant death zones, brine pools are biodiversity hotspots. The areas immediately surrounding them support some of the densest concentrations of life found anywhere in the deep ocean. Why? Because of the methane. Many brine pools release methane from the sea floor. This methane seeps upward through the sediment, dissolving into the water column, and there are bacteria that love methane. Methanotrophic bacteria, organisms that metabolize methane for energy through chemosynthesis. These bacteria form thick mats around the edges of brine pools, dense carpets of microbial life, sometimes several inches thick, coating every rock and surface near the pool's shoreline. And these bacterial mats are the foundation of an entire ecosystem. Mussels colonize the mats. Specifically, species like Bathymodiolus, which have evolved a symbiotic relationship with methanotrophic bacteria. The mussels host the bacteria in their gills, providing a home in exchange for nutrition. The bacteria metabolize methane, producing organic compounds that the mussels absorb. And where there are mussels, there are predators. Crabs, snails, worms, shrimp, all feeding on the mussels or on the bacterial mats, or on each other. Fish patrol the edges, hunting for crustaceans. The result is a small oasis of abundance in the deep sea, where most of the seafloor is barren and food is scarce. It's like finding a thriving city in the middle of a desert, and it's all powered by poison. The very methane and hydrogen sulfide that make the brine deadly also support the ecosystem surrounding it. This creates a bizarre situation. Animals are drawn to brine pools because that's where the food is. But if they get too close, if they miscalculate and swim into the brine itself, they die instantly. Eat carefully, or you're dead. The footage is disturbing. You watch a perfectly healthy fish swimming, and then suddenly it's not. It twitches once, twice, and then goes still, sinks slowly into the brine, joins the graveyard at the bottom. The ecosystem continues around it, indifferent. Life and death exist millimeters apart, separated by a chemical gradient invisible to the eye, but absolute in its lethality. Now let's talk about what lives inside the brine pools themselves. Not the corpses, the actual living organisms that call hypersaline death lakes home. You'd think nothing could survive in there. The salinity is extreme. The oxygen is zero. Most brine pools are completely anoxic. The pH is often highly acidic or alkaline. It's hostile in every possible way. And yet, life persists. Extremophile bacteria and archaea thrive in brine pools. These microorganisms have evolved biological mechanisms so bizarre, so alien, that they barely resemble normal life. They use proteins that only function under extreme salinity. They have cell membranes made from exotic lipids that don't break down in hypersaline environments. They metabolize chemicals that would kill normal bacteria. And they're diverse, stunningly diverse. Early studies predicted brine pools would host a handful of specialized species. Instead, researchers find hundreds, sometimes thousands of distinct microbial species in a single pool. The genetic diversity rivals that of tropical rainforests. Some scientists propose that brine pools act as refuges for ancient lineages of bacteria, organisms that thrived billions of years ago when Earth's oceans were different. The hypersaline and anoxic conditions in brine pools might resemble the oceans of early Earth, meaning these bacteria are living fossils, unchanged for billions of years. What's really fascinating is that these microorganisms might hold keys to understanding the origin of life itself. The conditions in brine pools, high salinity, anoxic environment, abundant chemical energy sources, resemble theories about where life first emerged on Earth. If life can exist in brine pools, it can probably exist anywhere. Mars had salty lakes billions of years ago. Europa has subsurface oceans potentially rich in salts. Enceladus has hydrothermal vents spewing minerals into liquid water. All of these environments might host life, and brine pools give us templates for what that life might look like. This is why NASA studies brine pools, why astrobiologists collect samples, because those bacteria might be our best proxy for alien life. Now we enter the realm of speculation, the theories that don't appear in peer-reviewed journals but circulate in online forums and conspiracy websites. Theory 1. Brine pools are monitoring stations. According to this theory, the extreme preservation properties of brine pools make them ideal for long-term underwater surveillance equipment. Drop a monitoring device into a brine pool and it's protected from biological fouling, corrosion, and accidental discovery. The dense brine would shield it from most sonar, and the toxic environment ensures nothing disturbs it. Who would deploy such equipment? Government intelligence agencies, obviously. The theory suggests that during the Cold War, both the US and Soviet Union identified brine pools as strategic locations for underwater listening posts. Evidence? None directly. But supporters point to the fact that many brine pools are in geopolitically sensitive areas. The Red Sea borders critical shipping lanes. The Gulf of Mexico is surrounded by US military installations. The Mediterranean has always been strategically important. Is this plausible? Technically, yes. Practically, probably not. The difficulty of accessing brine pools and maintaining equipment at those depths would be enormous. But probably not isn't definitely not. Then there's the biological warfare angle. Extremophile bacteria from brine pools have unique properties. They survive conditions that kill everything else. They produce exotic enzymes and compounds. These properties make them interesting for biological weapons research. Imagine engineering a bacterium that can survive in human tissues at extreme pH levels, or one that produces toxins stable enough to remain lethal for years. Samples from brine pools would provide genetic material for such research. Is this happening? Unknown. Multiple nations have bioweapons research programs. Could brine pool extremophiles be part of this? It's possible. Samples are collected regularly by research institutions. Some of those institutions have military funding or connections. This isn't proof of anything. It's just acknowledging that the potential exists. Now we need to talk about mining, because those metallic deposits in brine pools haven't gone unnoticed. Deep-sea mining is becoming economically viable. Brine pools present particularly lucrative targets. The metallic mud in pools contains concentrations of valuable metals that rival or exceed land-based ore deposits: iron, manganese, zinc, copper, silver, even gold. At current metal prices, the recoverable resources in some pools could be worth billions. Mining companies argue that extracting these metals is necessary for green energy transitions. Electric vehicles need lithium and cobalt. Solar panels need silver. Wind turbines need rare earth elements. All of these exist in brine pool deposits. The environmental counterargument is straightforward. Mining will destroy unique ecosystems. But companies respond, if there are dozens of brine pools, losing one or two to mining won't eliminate the ecosystems entirely. This is technically true, but it's missing the point. Each brine pool is unique. The chemical composition varies. The extremophile communities differ. Destroying one pool doesn't just eliminate one ecosystem. It eliminates a unique variant that might host organisms found nowhere else. The debate is ongoing. Environmental groups are lobbying for protection. Scientists are calling for more research. Companies are pushing for permits, arguing that delays cost money. Who will win? History suggests the companies will, eventually. Economic interests usually triumph over environmental concerns. Maybe in 20 years, we'll look back and realize we destroyed something irreplaceable because we wanted slightly cheaper smartphones. The Red Sea harbors approximately 25 deep-sea anoxic brine pools, more than any other region on Earth. This makes it a hotspot for research and a laboratory for studying extremophile evolution. But it also makes it a minefield. 25 known death lakes scattered across a relatively small area, and those are just the ones we've found. The 2020 discovery of the Eniom brine pools added 4 more to the count. These pools are positioned just 1.2 miles from the coast, making them the closest to shore ever discovered. This proximity is unusual and raises questions about how they formed and whether they're connected to other geological features near the coastline. One theory suggests that these pools are relatively young, formed recently as salt deposits dissolved and brine seeped downward. If true, this means brine pools can appear in areas we previously thought were safe. Coastal waters, where shipping lanes pass, areas where submarines operate, regions where undersea cables are laid. Imagine a submarine conducting operations near the coast, unaware that a toxic brine pool exists just below its operational depth. The sub descends through the brine interface, and suddenly, its ballast systems are dealing with water twice as dense as expected. Buoyancy calculations go wrong. The sub could sink uncontrollably. Has this ever happened? Unknown. But it's plausible enough that naval authorities have shown interest in brine pool locations. Detailed maps of known pools are classified or restricted in some regions. Let's return to the bodies, because there's something about the corpses in brine pools that bothers researchers. The high salinity preserves organic matter. This makes sense. We've been using salt to preserve food for thousands of years, but brine pool preservation is different. It's too good, too perfect. Fish corpses recovered from brine pools show almost no signs of decay, no bacterial colonization, no tissue breakdown, no signs of scavenging. They look identical to fresh specimens, despite potentially being years or decades old. Some researchers have noted that the tissues show evidence of chemical alteration. the proteins are modified in ways that don't match normal preservation processes. It's as if the brine isn't just preventing decay, it's actively modifying the organic matter into something more stable. What's causing this? The mundane explanation: the combination of salt, anoxia, and dissolved minerals creates a unique chemical environment that stabilizes proteins through mechanisms we don't fully understand yet. The unsettling explanation: something in the brine is actively preserving the corpses. Perhaps enzymes produced by extremophile bacteria. Perhaps the same metabolic pathways that allow bacteria to survive in the brine also operate on dead tissue. Why would bacteria preserve dead tissue? No clear evolutionary advantage, unless the preserved corpses serve some function in the ecosystem. Maybe they provide a stable substrate for bacterial colonies. Maybe they slowly release nutrients. Or maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe the preservation is just a side effect of extreme chemistry with no deeper meaning. But the fact that we don't know is itself noteworthy. Brine pools force us to confront uncomfortable truths about life and death. Life is resilient, but only within limits. Push too far, and resilience breaks. The fish that swim into brine pools don't suffer. They die too quickly for suffering, but they die nonetheless, and their corpses serve as warnings. Is that a metaphor? Are brine pools teaching us something about boundaries, about recognizing when we've gone too far? Maybe. Or maybe they're just geology and chemistry playing out in the deep ocean, with no deeper meaning beyond the physical processes involved. But humans are meaning-making creatures. We see patterns, we draw connections, and brine pools fit neatly into narratives about danger, preservation, and the thin line between thriving and dying. These death lakes remind us that the ocean isn't friendly. It's not hostile either, it's indifferent. It doesn't care whether we live or die. It operates according to chemistry and physics, and if we cross the wrong boundary, we die. Not because the ocean wants us dead, just because that's what happens when osmosis equalizes across a 27% salinity gradient. That indifference is oddly comforting. The ocean isn't malicious. It's not punishing us. It's just being itself. And if we're smart, careful, and respectful, we can explore it. We can learn from it. But if we're careless, arrogant, or greedy, the ocean will kill us, not deliberately. Just as a consequence of natural processes we failed to respect. Brine pools embody this principle perfectly. Beautiful, deadly, indifferent. So what's at the heart of brine pools? Death, obviously. Instant. Preserving death for anything that crosses the boundary. Life, paradoxically. Extremophiles thriving in conditions that kill everything else. Ecosystems flourishing on the edge of toxicity. Chemistry. Salt concentrations that shouldn't be possible. Chemical reactions that we are still documenting. And mystery. Always mystery. Questions we can't answer. Phenomena we can't explain. Organisms we haven't discovered yet. Every brine pool explored reveals new surprises. Every sample sequenced contains unknown genetic material. Every expedition returns with more questions than answers. Are there brine pools we'll never find? Absolutely. The ocean is vast, and brine pools are small. There could be hundreds of undiscovered death lakes scattered across the global seafloor, each one a unique ecosystem, each one a potential key to understanding life's limits. Will we find them before they're destroyed? Maybe. If funding continues, if political will exists, if mining doesn't expand too quickly, if climate change doesn't alter ocean chemistry too drastically, it's a race. Exploration versus exploitation, knowledge versus economics. And we won't know who wins until it's over. If you've made it this far, you now know more about brine pools than most humans. You know about the chemistry, the biology, the dangers, the mysteries. You know that somewhere, right now, at the bottom of the Red Sea or the Gulf of Mexico, there's a pool of hypersaline water sitting motionless in a rocky depression. That pool is killing any fish that swim into it. It's preserving those corpses for centuries, and it's hosting bacterial communities that might hold keys to understanding the origin of life itself. These are reminders. The ocean is vast, mostly unexplored, full of wonders and horrors in equal measure. And every time we think we understand it, it reveals something new that forces us to admit we're still just beginning to comprehend the planet we live on. The pools will still be there tomorrow, next year, a century from now, unless we destroy them, unless mining operations dredge them, unless pollution degrades them. What we do with them is up to us. Protect them, study them, exploit them, ignore them. The choice isn't final yet, but it will be soon. Choose wisely. That's all for tonight. The underwater lakes that kill everything they touch. If you made it through this deep dive, genuinely impressed, smash that like button if brine pools fascinate you. Subscribe for more ocean mysteries, because there's plenty more weird stuff down there waiting to be explored. And drop a comment. Tell me what you think. Should we protect brine pools or mine them? Would you visit one in person? Or just let me know where you're watching from? Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious around underwater lakes, and remember, not all water is friendly. Some of it wants to pickle you.